Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Today, I have from Connecticut, Bob Johnson, WPKN, Radio Uninvited. Oh my goodness, I am excited about this. Hello, Mr. Johnson. How are you doing?
Hey, Paul. How are you? Nice to see you.
Pretty good, pretty good. So, how is it up there in Connecticut today?
Well, I'm on the border between Connecticut and New York. I actually live in New York and work in Connecticut. I'm one of those. I live on the border there, and it's raining, and it's been raining for the last 48 hours, and it's chilly. It's just it's been that way all winter and spring, so it's nothing unusual.
See, I'm
We
down
had a
here in
few
the
nice
desert.
days.
I'm down here in the desert. And we got sunny with 101.
Wow.
All right. Well, welcome to In the Moment. If you could, please tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your education, and what you do.
Well, the current I do as a teacher. I'm a teacher. I'm a full-time teacher, a full-time science and technology, theater, and film media teacher. That's the full-time job. And then I produce a couple of radio shows. One's called Second Saturday Magazine that occurs once a month on WPKN. And then we have another show. It's an overnight show. It's kind of a special show. It's put together by 4 different producers. It's called Radio Uninvited. And Asia Hussein, who's I'm connected with via media, she's my co-producer and co-founder of a little production company we call Kicklight Productions, and we've been out there with Bryce Noble and Ariel Ray, and they've been bringing in some great interviews. And what I do usually on a Sunday afternoon like today, I usually pull these things together, and we try to get the show up on the overnight for Wednesday into Thursday East Coast time. And then WPKN has an archive, so folks can tune in to our archive for 2 weeks after that. But I've been working on a committee. Because it's an independent public radio station, we really need public money. In other words, most of the money that we receive are from our listeners. We survive with a relatively small budget compared to other community radio stations. We got about $250,000 a year for that we have to raise. And so what I'm trying to do now is create not necessarily, I would call it a paywall, but to hold our shows indefinitely. And if people want to go back, just like the New York Times has a archive, we could hold our archives a little longer than 2 weeks for our talk shows. We're mostly a music station. That's a little bit more complicated if you're going to hold music for more than 2 weeks because of the fees that we do pay as a radio station. But the talk shows, we can put in a special premium for our listeners to subscribe to so that they can retrieve any of the talk shows that we do. And Radio Uninvited is a talk show. It's mostly an interview show. And so they would have that available to them for any length of time. So that's what I'm working on currently at the radio station.
Nice.
And I've been teaching science, and I'm looking forward to June 8th. I met a teacher once, and he always says, people come up to him and say, "Why do you teach?" And he says, "I pull out a little card." And I said, "You pull out a card? What's on the card?" He goes, "Well, on one side it's July, and the other side is August." So that's a lot of the work that I can do for the community can happen in the summer. I do manage to pull together lots of different projects that I'm able to do over the summer. So, even though I'm not teaching, I still feel I'm in the mix of media and film because I've been able to be privileged to work with a couple of production companies that have put together a couple of films. So it's a lot of what I do. Did I answer your question, Paul?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. What grade level do you teach?
I teach high school. I teach high school science, and I teach in an alternative school, which is a school that services students that have a difficulty making it in the mainstream. So we're a school for students who really need that TLC, extra attention. It's a good place. We do a lot of project-based learning. Kids do a lot of hands-on, and I have a lot of fun. I mean, look at me. I'm pretty long in the tooth, and a lot of my colleagues are retiring at that young age of 55 and then traveling the world. Well, I'm climbing up towards 70, and I'm still here having fun every day. So I really enjoy it.
Excellent. Excellent. I commend you. I commend you, especially teaching high school students and all that. Oh my goodness. How do you keep their interest in science?
How do I keep their interest or my interest?
Their interest.
Their interest. Well, we do a lot of hands-on things. I bring in a lot of for physics. It's a lot of fun. We're bringing a lot of toys because we can describe the motion of anything from roller coaster carts. And as a matter of fact, the next few weeks we're working with electricity, so I have a bunch of circuit boards. We don't have to do the soldering though. It's just project toys that some of these companies created that kids can put together very sophisticated circuits with. It's called a snap-on electronics. Maybe some parents out there can look for it. It's a snap-on electronics, and I have like 700 projects that the kids can do with these, and it's all hands-on, and that's where the kids have the most fun, and that's where I have the most fun, quite frankly. When they're working, putting together projects, there's no behavior issues, right?
Nice.
They're not sitting there taking notes or trying to solve word problems, which I do a lot of, by the way. We do a lot of word problems in physics, but just to show those concrete, where they're able to put together things and see how they work and make real measurements in the real world is key. So and I think physics teachers will tell you that it's one of the best science subjects to teach. And I've taught them all. I've taught biology, I've taught environmental science, and I've taught chemistry, and by far physics is the most fun for the teacher.
Nice.
And the student.
Now, physics wasn't my strong suit. Now, I really did get into the sciences, though. Chemistry, biology, anatomy. I loved them. And the experiments. Yes, just love the experiments. So, in relation to education today, what are your feelings on how things are? What kind of changes do we need to make? And after high school, college, what are your thoughts on tuition, how it should be done? What's your thoughts on these things?
And just for the record, I'm speaking my personal opinions, and it doesn't have
right.
to do any of the educational institutions that I happen to be part of, and we can talk about some of the other institutions that I belong to. But I think what we most need is to dedicate more resources. There was a big movement in the 70s. I don't know if you remember this, Paul, but we're not getting educational outcomes, and we keep dumping money into the education system. We keep dumping money, and we're not getting outcomes, right? That was a big thing. Democrats are a bunch of tax and spend liberals. And really, that hurt education because we started to take the resources away. Teaching jobs, the increases in salaries are far beyond those, or far less. Teaching salary increases are far less than the increases that a person with that kind of background, that kind of education would get in the corporate world, for example. So we're behind in resources. So, and I'm not just saying pay, I'm saying resources for students. I'm saying, personnel for students, social workers, psychologists, guidance counselors,
Yes.
Auxiliary staff, bus drivers, cafeteria workers. The whole infrastructure in education has been underfunded. The buildings are falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
The septic systems, the air conditioning systems, the HVACs, the structure itself. The buildings are in much desperate need for rehabilitation, and it's just because of this movement to cut budgets, and we've made education a lower priority than, let's say, the military. So if we could invert that a little bit, said let's make education a priority, and we got enough hardware out there to keep us safe. We got enough aircraft carriers. Let's take some of those resources and put them into education. I think you'd see a better outcome.
I agree. One of the things that I talk about, especially in my book and all that, is education and what we need to do to change the way that it functions right now. Up until the 60s, the United States for college was tuition free, and it wasn't until corporate America started taking over the industry and turned it into an industry. And now when you look at other countries, other countries that are tuition free or very low tuition, some countries even have complete free education, where board and all of that stuff is also paid for. And they're now outperforming the United States. And when you look at our Constitution, one of the things it talks about in Article 1, Section 8 is the general welfare and common defense of the people. In relation to, Congress has the right to lay and collect taxes, excises, impose duties, so on. Education falls under that general welfare along with health. And we have taken the educational system and went from a tuition-free educational system to a system where we now have students that have student loans. I myself, at age 54, still have almost $60,000 in tuition to pay. Okay, student loans, and I have no income right now. I do this, so hopefully this will become my income and I can pay them back. But we need to change that system. There shouldn't be tuition for education, and we have a way to generate more income through a better taxation system. Especially a lot of people, when they say, "Well, where are we going to get the money? Where are we going to get the money?" Our GDP is only 20 trillion. The GDP doesn't figure in business to business transactions. We have over $100 trillion in transactions every year. Why aren't we bringing in 20 trillion in funding? We could then have education, like you just said, where we needed the resources. We could do that. And put those resources in there without charging a tuition.
Are you advocating a VAT tax? It sounds like
it's similar. It's a transactional tax at the point of sale, but it's not just a tax on the consumer. It's also a tax on the seller, something that no one else has ever done. The seller also is going to pay a tax for selling the product. So that way corporations will pay their fair share, because they definitely do that now.
That sounds too reasonable. Yeah, look, we've given the roads, we've given the infrastructure, the electricity, the power to these corporations to make their things that consumers buy. We've built these roads so they can get their goods and services to market. They should be paying for that. We have a fire department that when if your factory blows up,
yes,
there's going to be a fire department there. So yeah, we need to do this. I totally agree.
Yes. Ariel says should be for a UBI too. Absolutely, Ariel. Absolutely. Definitely UBI, education, healthcare, all of these things should be taken care of. So we have a way to do it. It's just we have to get the Congress people to vote for these ways to do it. And of course, the corporations pull those puppet strings. Just like I was talking about education, it used to be tuition free and it's no longer now. Healthcare used to be free, state healthcare up until the 20s, and again, corporations. But let's go back to education. The next question I have for you in relation to education would be AI. What do you think AI is going to have as an impact in relation to how students learn? And eventually, do you think there will be basically AI robots in the classroom teaching the classes? Or do you think it'll just completely leave the classroom and everybody's going to be doing it over their phone or over their pad or whatever the case may be?
Well, I think in the last 10 years we've had products like Grammarly that help students with their grammar. I think it's a learning tool. I don't really think it's a threat to education. I think it's just like any other tool. It's going to enhance the relationship between teacher and student. You're still going to need a mentor. You're still going to need some gray-haired people around to offer up some wisdom, some life experience wisdom. Uh, whether it's a college professor giving some advice to a student that might come to them, uh, maybe dating advice, or should I do this sport? Even if it comes down to that kind of relationship, it's not going to take away from the standard classroom teacher student relationship. I think it'll enhance it because kids will be coming in with better papers, better, they'll have better outcomes before that for that. So there's just I think it's an overall positive.
Definitely. I agree with that assessment. One of the things that I see in the media is that even colleges, universities, high schools, they know that a lot of students recent have been using um, AI to do their papers for them.
Right, right.
Uh, so if the student is using the AI to write the paper, what is the student learning other than to have a computer write the paper for them? Is there do you think we need safeguards put in place in relations to plagiarism and AI?
Yeah,
Uh,
I think those are important, but Paul, as a pedagogue, you should be able to have the student do an oral examination based on their paper. If you're really suspicious that the student is not original with some of their writing or is used or plagiarized, you can easily assess that with a couple of very well structured questions. And that could be part of the process of when you turn in a paper. You have to provide whether it's a recorded oral, um, this is not a dissertation, but an explanation of your research.
okay.
The So I think if you added those components, you'd probably be okay.
I like that, adding a component to what's already in effect. I think that would go a long ways because if an AI wrote your paper and you haven't read it and you don't know, you just hand it in and now you have an oral exam on it. You're not going to know what the hell is on that paper. You actually are going to have to read it and know something about it. So yeah, I like that.
Especially if the expectation is before you write the paper. Look, hey guys, I know you're going to find some good research with your AI, but I want to prompt you with different questions. I want you to create a good AI prompt. And there are ways to do this. Create a good AI prompt, let me see the paper, and then you're going to have an oral examination based on that. So again, if you build up those expectations and you develop you develop a rubric with which demonstrates to the professor that you've learned something from the process. I think that'll probably mitigate some of the fears about AI.
All right. We have another question.
Okay.
Bryce Noble, higher education is a racket. There is no way to justify the rise in costs, especially in the last 20 to 30 years. Colleges, universities, practices, as well as the loaning institutions should be examined. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. I don't
That's
think.
not a question. That's good. That's good, Bryce.
Yes, it's a statement, but I'm going to turn it into a question because I like this. I want to say that I don't think higher education is a total racket in the aspect of the teaching ability of the professors and what people are trying to learn to advance their lives. Where the racket comes in is the cost of it, as Bryce points out. Um, I believe that, again, a tuition free educational system is the best route to go. And I believe that, again, with the other changes that I've talked about, I believe that we can actually make education better, especially if we're inserting aspects of AI into the teaching components of it. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I'm not going to bash professors and students because I think that's the role of the teacher and the student is really hasn't really changed. It's changed somewhat. I mean, with different colleges have different approaches to that. But what I'm saying, what I think the question is that colleges should be institutions for the public, and there's so many private institutions. They have such large endowments. Why aren't they doing more to help the community with their endowments? I mean, what is Harvard? It's like almost a billion dollars of endowments that Harvard has. I might be exaggerating, but I think it's up into the hundreds of millions. Uh, they could be educated. They can be. Those colleges should be held accountable to go into the communities and bring more of the students in need into their institutions. And not to say that Harvard isn't doing it, they are doing it, but they could do a lot more. And if that means adding extra professors, that means adding extra professors. That means satellite campuses, that could mean satellite campuses, but they definitely should do a lot more with what they have. And I don't know because the professors that I work with a group called Process Oriented Guided Inquiry Learning, which is a group of professors and high school teachers and professors, and we get together each summer and we talk about how we can better prepare students for college. And as I said earlier, I don't think there's any major difference now between the professor and the student. In undergrads are structured a lot differently than when I was in school. I was never in a class with more than 20 students. As an undergrad, as a matter of fact, in my chemistry major, I had maybe 10 or 12 students at the most.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a very close relationship with my professors. So I think you can take that endowment money and create smaller classes. You can create institutions where students feel connected. And some institutions out there, we can't paint colleges all with one brush. There are some great small college institutions that really do a very good service to their community and to their students. So it's these, and I think what Bryce is, hinting at, some of these larger private institutions are the real culprits. They don't do enough for their community, and I would agree with that.
I agree. I agree with that also. I want to kind of delve into during COVID, a lot of schools were shut down and they went to teaching online. And I know that my grandchildren, in one aspect, they loved it because they could just go online and do their work and then be done and not have to spend a whole day at school. It gave them more playtime. Whereas they also missed the interaction they had with their friends. So I see the pros and cons to learning online and learning in a classroom. When I personally went to the College of Southern Nevada, There were classes that, yes, I was in the classroom, 20 to 30 students. And I also took a few online classes. Um, I don't think there should be just one or the other. I liked the mix to where, hey, I'm pretty good with mathematics. I don't need to be in a classroom for this. I'm taking this one online. But now in philosophy, I like the lecture. I like the conversation. I like the debate and the back and forth. So, do you think that it should be a good mix like that?
Yeah, I think there's nothing inherently wrong with distance learning, and that's what we're talking about. And it is suitable for some courses and not suitable for others. As you said, a discussion course like philosophy or anthropology, which I thoroughly enjoyed when I was in college,
Mhm.
that interaction with the student. And some of the practical laboratories that I did as a chemistry major, I needed to be there. You needed to be at the lab bench. But yeah, I think there are some courses, maybe in your math classes where it's mostly problem solving, stoichiometry classes where they're problem solving. Maybe that could be better suited for distance learning. But you're absolutely right. There are studies, and there will probably be more studies that will demonstrate the benefits, the drawbacks of what we consider hybrid, like a hybrid learning environment.
Right, right.
Hybrid
Now,
meaning distance mix, distance and
right.
actual living classrooms.
Yes, because now I know, granted, there's going to be people that they're going to need more of that one-on-one attention when it comes to math
Right.
because everybody is great with math. Whereas, like, there's people that could probably do just online communications or online English literature type courses, and show up to that Zoom call and give their oration or whatever the case is. Whereas I prefer the one-on-one. So I'm sure that there should be opportunities for both, for comfort reasons, for people who need that extra one-on-one attention. I do agree that the classrooms need to be smaller. You were gifted to only have 10, 15, 20 people in a classroom. I know that when I was in some of the smaller classes where there'd be like 20 students, that those classes, the students got more attention. Whereas when I would be in a larger class, it would have 30 to 35 students. That became difficult. So yeah, I think smaller classes is good. Um, Ariel brings up a point here. It's another topic aspect that I was going to go into. Boy, we have all the uninvited on here. College is one thing.
You're ready to support the people. You're supporting the uninvited people. Yeah.
I was never prepared for life, money, business, emotional intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. I went to Beverly High, by the way. I agree. We've had discussions in spaces on this that I don't think the educational system today, now I could be wrong. Granted, I haven't been in school for quite a long time. I high school, this is where Ariel is going with it. When I was in high school, I was not prepared for the real world. I mean, yes, I had an accounting class. I learned how to figure out a checkbook, but I was never explained to me why I had to figure out the checkbook. You will own one of these. You'll have one of these someday. Well, okay. So what do I need to have this for? No one explained to me bills, working, what I'm going to have to do to move forward. You need to go to college. Well, what for? Well, yeah, granted, I know I'm going to have to work, but what is this going to serve? What purpose is this going to serve me? Do you think we need to better prepare our children in high school for the world they're going into?
Well, Connecticut has just required financial literacy as a required for graduation. I think it's going to be for the 24-25. I think it's the first year it's a rollout. So that's great. And, New York has had financial literacy classes that I was aware of. And I actually took a financial class when I was in high school. Yeah, it was a mix of accounting and typing, and bookkeeping like that. And was it useful? Yeah, it was certainly useful. But you're right. We have not really paid attention to those kinds of life skills. There are other life skills too that we're not teaching. We used to teach a home ec class, remember?
Yes.
Those are phased out. But those are important classes, and it doesn't have to be. Oh, the young ladies take the home economics classes, and the men, take wood shop. But that's how it was when I was in high school. We were segregated into those two different vocational classes. They should be, they should still be offered a culinary class that's for both, for all genders, for all students, culinary, even metal shops. They should be for all for all students who are interested. So vocational education has definitely been something that we've ignored over the last 30 years, and we now, I think, in New York State especially, they have CT, career technical education, CTE, what you hear a lot at the meetings that I go to, and how important vocational education is to students who really gravitate toward, making things, to repairing things, to, tinkering. Should have a class called tinkering.
Mhm.
So I'm very big on uh, of those kinds of classes being reintroduced for for all students. So
Almost.
yeah, we've we most definitely. And that
I
goes to financial literacy, because it's like, okay, you need to order these parts. You have to order this to make 10 cakes. This is what you need. This is how much flour you need. So there's a whole course infrastructure that teaches those kinds of life skills. So important.
Yes, definitely. I took cooking and sewing, and I got made fun of probably for about the first few weeks. And I would tell the jocks, hey, you're in that small engines class with a bunch of sweaty other guys and all that. I'm in a class loaded with chicks. Okay. So you can make fun of me all you want. Okay. My whole classroom is nothing but women. But no, they should definitely. I mean, I enjoyed taking the cooking class and the sewing class, and taking those classes, especially the sewing. Do you know how many times I've, ripped up, got a shirt ripped or something like that? I know how to sew it back together. So it has paid off. Um,
There you go.
yeah,
Especially for someone who's not working, you need to repair your clothes.
there you go. There you go. When we had the governor recall here in California, one of the candidates that was running against Governor Newsom was Kevin Paffrath. Most people know him on a YouTube show called Meet Kevin. Okay. He had this idea for future schools, as he called it, I think it was, where the universities, the high schools would interact with the businesses in the community. And what they would do is they would communicate, okay, we're looking at expanding in this field. We're probably going to need X amount of new workers over the next, X amount of years. Um, this part of our business is fading down. We're not going to have a need for as many attorneys or blah, 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 or whatever. And kind of working to where the classes become available based upon what the need of the area is going to be. And he was also encouraging um, young people that are still in junior high, middle school, and high school to be able to enroll in college courses in the direction they planned on heading for their careers, and receive the college credits for it while they were still in middle, junior high, high school. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Again, we're talking about student, building programs around student interest with the future lens of what kinds of jobs are going to be out there in 10 years. That's the dilemma we're facing. I sit on a board of education called the Board of Cooperative Education Services, and we service 33 component school districts in my county. And what we do is we provide vocational training to students in culinary and video production and veterinarian science, and a bunch of different things. We have adult education programs in electrical and in plumbing. So what we are attempting to do as a BOCES, Board of Cooperative Education Services, is talk to those businesses. We have several businesses involved with in discussions about what they need. We just had a couple of our students who were in the automotive. As soon as they graduate in June, they have a job. They've gotten offers from local dealerships, local repair shops. They can't get enough of our kids. So we need, as a country, to talk to our businesses, our local community businesses, find out what they need, and gear our educational programs not only to our students' interest and to the interests of our society, but the interests of, especially in the small businesses and large businesses that need trades, that need engineers, that need service workers, hospitality workers. Those are, that's what we have to offer these days. Hospitality, information. You're always going to have car repair, electric cars.
Right.
We just got hit with a hybrid car at our automotive school. Somebody donated a hybrid car, so the kids are thrilled that they get to work on a hybrid car. And we're looking for a Tesla. So
Yes.
anybody has or a Bolt, it doesn't have to be a Tesla, but we're looking for a full electric car. So if anybody out there wants to donate an electric car, just contact the BOCES in New York State. There's many BOCES, depends on what part of the state. We happen to be Southern Westchester County BOCES, but there are opportunities for businesses to get involved with our programs. We have a beautiful graphic design program. We have students who are putting together billboards, putting together magazine ads. So there's these great skills that these high school kids are learning. So let's continue to think about those career tech education pathways for kids. College is not always going to be the way to go. And I have a friend whose kid dropped out of NYU and has just gotten a $5 million investment in his business called Posh. He was just featured in Afrotech magazine. He and his partner are going to be competitors to Ticketmaster and Shopify. They've created a whole ticketing world out there. They just got a big, nice write-up and a big infusion of capital funds. So, college is not for everybody.
Right. Oh, no, I agree. See, I think that a lot of the technical jobs where you go to school and you get a certificate, I think there should be degrees involved with that, because I have a personal belief system where there's a lot of people out there that if you don't have the letters behind your name, that they think less of you. And there's like plumbers and electricians out there that they know what they're doing, and yet it's just a certificate. They're not real professionals, blah blah blah, which is a bunch of garbage. I mean, I flipped houses. I know what plumbers and electricians do, and I think that there should be more credibility towards their education. I think there should be recognition for that, more than just a certificate. Bryce brings up.
Well, if your plumber has a $3 million house, they don't need that college certificate to demonstrate their success.
Right. Bryce brings to the table another great observation here. Higher education was never meant to feed the labor market. Does Bob think that the college system has been essentially softly selling a false bill of goods to prospective graduates?
I think in certain areas, yes. Again, I don't want to, pigeonhole all colleges into that sort of uh, mindset. I think, colleges are really designed to build a professional, educated class that knows how to think, and y- and what profession doesn't require you to think, right? Most professions do require you to think, and if the question is a labor market, and you're absolutely right. I don't think colleges were ever designed to fill a labor market. It was filled to build a professional uh, community of doctors and
Right.
lawyers and engineers. So, yeah, I think on that level. But you know what? Engineers are workers. I was an engineer. I went in every day, and I had not only tons of paperwork, but if things got crazy on the shop floor, I had to go in there with a wrench. I had to go fix stuff. I had to go pull out pumps. And I had to know how things operated. I had to have a certain amount of mechanical ability. So again, it's you're right. We should always have kind of a hybrid education. I think engineering is a little different because it is a hybrid education. It is a hands-on and a more of a thinking, a bureaucratic education. But there needs to be, I guess, more of that.
Yes, definitely, definitely. My friend Shadow Fox, she threw in here BS equals bullshit, MS more of the same, and PhD file higher and deeper. Okay.
I've heard that one before. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Now I'm going to go kind of a little different direction here. I'm going to go more into the politics of things and all that, more of the political atmosphere that we're living in today. Um, we have states that are banning books. We have states that are outlawing discussion of pronouns or gender and stuff like this. We have states that are banning critical race theory, which was never taught in K through 12 anyways. What do you think about all this political propaganda? Do you think that the right is going too far, or is the left going too far with the woke mind virus? What is your thoughts on this? Or do you think that we just simply need to just sit back and watch it all implode upon itself?
You really give me a lot of choices there, Paul. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, so there was a real deep polarization back then. So I don't see it any worse than I did when I was growing up. What I'm really concerned with, and I'm going to just kind of change it a little bit, is the climate and our collective ability to ignore the looming disaster that's hanging over all of us. I think politically, we are a democracy that needs to elect people who have uh, who can understand that there is going to be a future and younger generations need to survive. And if we don't have, if we don't have strong educated population, it goes back to education, right? We don't have a
Mhm.
strong educated population. We're going to keep electing officials that you know are just going to do what their private interests want them to do, and we are in a stalemate. I think we're in a stalemate right now. Just think, there are 50 senators, but California has two senators, New York has two senators, and there is probably a third of the population of the country right there. So, if you want to throw Massachusetts, New England, the rest of the, Massachusetts is pretty heavily populated. But if you want to throw in New Jersey too, again, there's 8 senators, and it represent an amazing number of people, 50 million people, 60 million, 70 million people. And we don't have that representation. So we've got, and then we have blue states sending money to red states. If we would, as a federal government, if we would just say, look, you've got, you want programs, we understand, when you get a flood, we're there to help you. But, the blue states subsidize the red states in federal money, but we don't have the representation. And that's annoying. So I don't know if there's any other cure except either to break California up into 7 different states and break New York up into 4 states so we have some better representation in terms of the Senate. But that's the only way I'm going to see things. That's the only way we're going to see things change. Because right now we have a minority ruling with their political will over the rest of us. And just that can't hold in a democracy.
Right. Yes and no, because I actually just had a conversation with Bryce about this, and I think that based upon from when our country first started and how we did our representation to what we have now, I do like the aspect that the senators are equal amongst the states versus the House of Representatives is based upon the population and it's divided out. I do agree that we do need more representation. So one of the ideas I came up with, I think we need to double both. I think we need to double the House and we need to double the Senate. And I think with that, we could actually have more representation. And it would be harder for one party to dominate over the other party. And of course,
why do we need a North Dakota and a South Dakota? Why do we need a West Virginia and a Virginia? Why do we need a North and South Carolina? Really, I'm just asking. So that representation right there, you've got 5 states. They have like a tenth of the population of the states that I was talking to you about before. It just, to me, the Senate is really where the power and the bottlenecks happen. You got this 50-50 split in the Senate. Just it's not democracy. Anyway, you asked about politics, so just going off here.
Not a problem. Yeah, no, I kind of see it differently in the aspect of I some of the smaller states. I think if we did the whole strictly by population, basically Texas, California, and New York would decide everything every time. And I don't think that we should have 3 states that dominate everything. I do believe.
Why not? I'm kidding. Go ahead. It's okay. It's okay. But I think we need a fair distribution of democracy. That's, and I don't know how that's going to work out, but we do need some fair distribution of the vote. Yep.
I think we need to eliminate the party system. I think the party system is the problem because we've become so much more tribal over the last 2 decades than it's ever been. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. I've seen it on its rise. I've done the research. I've put it in my book. It's unbelievable when you start looking at like filibuster and cloture and the increase in that over the years, and you look at how we have people that are in Congress and in the Senate that are just complete morons. I mean, there's just no other way to they're complete morons.
IQ tests are important.
I think we need better critical thinking skills, and here's kind of how I see things, and this is what I was kind of leading into to begin with. I think we have all this controversy in the schooling systems right now because I think a lot of states want to eliminate public schools because they want to eliminate the cost of it, and they want to eliminate the ability for people to go to school to become educated, because an educated populace would not allow what we have in office right now. And our populace just isn't educated enough to use critical thinking skills to vote in the elections that we have right now. We're not electing people based upon critical thinking skills. We are electing people based upon mental illness. Let me rephrase that, because I'm going to have people just come after me and all that. I find some of the people that are promoting some of the rhetoric that they have out there on how people should be treated, the ill treatment of other people, the hatred, the bigotry, the racism, the xenophobia that a lot of these people are throwing out there. I think people that are like that, it's one of two things. They are either mentally unstable, or they know what they're propagating and are doing it strictly for votes. And people are just too ignorant to comprehend what's going on. And they're voting for people that either come out with this fiery personality, and are disruptors. And that's one of the things that helped get Trump elected. He was a disruptor of the establishment, even though he is the establishment. But I think that we need to improve the educational system so that we can get better people in office for better representation.
Well, I agree. It's, when we look at the folks that get elected, and in some of the states where these folks are elected to represent a particular constituency, what's the educational system like in that constituency? What's the education level of the person that's elected? I mean, it's a democracy. You should be able to run. You should be able to vote, no matter how stupid you are. And so again, if we had better representation, I think some of that stuff would get mitigated. Some of those the people that are not so educated would not be elected because they couldn't, because the representation would be in the favor of people who were smarter.
Right.
Like you, Paul. Not me, like you.
Well, but see, this is what I'm saying, though, is I think that there are a lot of people in politics right now making a movement to eliminate education because they want to dumb the people down so that they can remain in office and in power.
Yeah, well, I think that's how American Republic had been set up from the get-go. Don't you think? It's if you look back at the founding fathers and how they wanted to protect their economic, they wanted to protect their economic power. It's hard to get away from history. I mean, we've been doing this for a couple of hundred, over 200 years now, 250 years. So it's like, it's going to be difficult to change. And,
Yes.
The court system right now, I think, is probably the toughest place on the checks and balances here. The courts are not, there's no checks and balances. It's like one branch of government goes off and does its own thing. Eliminating Roe, the Dobbs decision. What's going on there? The Holly Lobby. What is it? The Lobby Holly, whatever the heck that store is.
Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby. That decision where finance, campaign finance reform off the table. Once you throw billions of dollars into campaigns without any checks, balances, you do throw a lot of checks, without any sort of backstop to that system, you've created. That's what you've created. It's a group in Congress that represents special interests, both sides. Both two-party system, both sides accept that kind of money. We've got to do something. And I guess it was in the 80s, the late 80s and early 90s, that there was a big talk about campaign finance reform, and it never saw the light of day. I wonder why.
No, it never amounted to anything. I agree that there's all these, and again, a lot of people, when I have conversations, they think that if we fix this one thing, it's going to fix everything. When, as I point out in my writing, it's cumulative. There's a multitude of things that need to be fixed. You brought up the court system. I think that judges should have a term limit. Whether they're appointed or elected, there should be a term limit to that appointment or election. And we need to keep younger, fresher people coming into the system that know more about what's going on in the real world versus watching these people that have no clue as to what's going on in the real world. So we definitely
Watch
need.
out, generation. Yeah, Generation Z is on the case. I think that we are, from what I've, because these are my students now, and just recently, and now the last 10 years, these students, this younger generation, I'm saying under 25, look out, because they're not having it. They're not having this discrimination against people who just want to love each other. They're not having it. They're not having guns. They're not having it. They've had it. These are the kids who grew up with drills 4 or 5 times a year, hiding under desks, going into closets,
Yep.
traumatized over this, our inadequate gun laws, and they've lived through it, and they're not taking it. Once they start to wield their power, you'll see the next 10 years. I think we're
Yes.
going to see a lot of this ignorance, or this sort of like unwillingness to change our gun laws, for example, just to take one issue, or healthcare. You're going to see some major changes, and that's where I'm hopeful, because of the kids that I teach, and the kids that I've known over the last 10 or 15 years that are getting into politics, that are doing things that are so, there's such an antithesis of what sort of like the status quo is. I mean, if you look at what happened in Tennessee, and I guess where's the other state house that they kicked the trans person out of,
Montana.
was it Montana? You're going to see an active young people's movement.
Yes.
They're going to vote. They're going to demonstrate. They're going to get their voices heard, and we're going to see some changes. So that's my positive on this whole democracy thing, Paul. I think that's what we're looking at for our future, for the future, for the, for what's coming next, and maybe we'll see something happen.
I hope so. We're both getting up there. I hope we see these changes before we're not here, just so we can leave the world on a positive note, knowing yes, yes, yes. But I do agree. I think that we are going to see some dramatic changes. I've talked about how over the last 2 years, how this country is on this cusp of change. And as I've stated, I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be bad, but there is going to be change, and I'm hoping it's good. And even if it is the bad, I don't know how long it'll last, but eventually that will change also.
Yeah. Well, we just have to look at what's going on in Hungary right now, and I don't want to take this into international policies, but I read Foreign Policy magazine, and some big changes going in there too with the younger generation. And we have such a narrow view here in the United States. We kind of
Yes.
forget what's going on in the rest of the world, like in Africa, for example. So many great democratic movements are happening in Africa that we don't hear about. In the 70s, it was just constant conflict in Africa.
Right.
Now it's different. There's some real progress Pan Africanism is making. So again, I think hope for the future is with the younger generation, as it always is.
Yes.
I think the last two generations, the millennials and the Gen Xers, got the short end of the stick. I think they were so busy trying to survive that they didn't really emerge politically. When you talk to the millennials, some of the older millennials especially, it's like, well, I haven't voted. What's the sense? Why should I vote? My vote
Right.
is meaningless. I mean, you get that kind of attitude, and it's not good. We need people to vote, and
Yes.
people to pay attention. Who are you voting for? Why are you voting for that person? Where do they stand on climate change? Where do they stand on healthcare? Where do they stand on education? Find out what they believe in. Are they just in this? I think 1980s brought us this Reaganomics, this just cut taxes, go after the poor by cutting taxes. This welfare reform from Clinton, and it's not just Reagan, it's Clinton too, it's the Democrats too. It's that sort
Yes.
of like, let's play to the middle. Let's not go to the Great Society. The Democrats in the 60s, it was the Great Society, the Civil Rights Movement. Let's keep that progress going. No, we got a bunch of setbacks, and now it's time for that to turn over. The pendulum swings, and hopefully, Paul, that it swings toward the good.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to the Marianne Williamson interview. The more I listen to her, the more I'm like, I really
I've
love
always liked her.
I really love what she's got to say. So I'm looking so forward to that day. I'm hoping that, I've got ideas on what I think is going to happen, but I hope Marianne Williamson gives it a good run. So we could use her,
Paul, it's a real
kind of politics.
Yeah. She's a really interesting woman. I've always liked her. Thanks a lot, Paul, for doing this. I really appreciate your book. You're a really smart guy, and when I'm talking to with a smart guy, I feel like I'm in a privileged space. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliment, and I know that in one of the spaces you wanted to talk more to me about my gun laws and what I think need to be done. And I would love to have that conversation with you sometime, because there's an agenda behind the agenda. So I want you to keep that in mind. So when we talk, but
all right.
I want to thank everybody. Don't take off and all that. Hang out here for a minute. I'll talk with you in the after show here. I want to Sisler Johnson 2028. Okay.
Was that Bryce?
No, that was Ossia. Yeah.
I knew it had to be one of our pals.
All right. Remember, everyone, be kind, be happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.